The boy's voice was barely more than a whisper, but it carried like a gunshot through the dusty air. "Sir, my mama's bones are broken. She can't take no more pain." His eyes, wide and desperate, looked up at the stranger on horseback. A man who had seen enough of the world to know cruelty when it showed its face. And in that single moment, when the cowboy heard those words, he felt something inside him stir, something that had been buried deep, under years of wandering and silence. The boy's mother lay inside a sagging shack, ribs fractured from a beating that never should have happened, her skin marked with the kind of scars that told a story no one should ever carry. And outside that shack stood men, the kind who thought the law was theirs to write, theirs to bend, theirs to break. Ranch barons with too much land, too much power, and not an ounce of mercy. They had taken everything from the boy and his mother, except her will to keep breathing. And now, with her body failing, it seemed even that was slipping away. The cowboy didn't know why he dismounted, didn't know why his boots hit the ground heavier than usual, why his hand brushed against the revolver at his hip like it was reminding him what he was made of. Maybe it was because he saw something of himself in that boy's eyes, the same hollow hunger, the same quiet pleading that no one else had answered. Or maybe it was because he had wandered long enough, watched enough wrongs, and finally decided he couldn't stomach one more. He stepped past the boy, ducked into the shack, and the smell hit him, dust, blood, and suffering. The woman tried to sit up when she saw him, but the pain dragged her back down. Her eyes, though, still carried fire. Don't get yourself killed," she whispered through cracked lips. But the cowboy only shook his head. "Ma'am," he said, voice low but steady, "you've carried too much already. Let me take it from here." Outside, the barons laughed, spitting into the dirt, talking about how the boy and his mama didn't belong here no more. Their boots stomped the porch, their voices dripping with cruelty. One of them shouted, "That's our land she's squatting on. And if you think one ragged drifter can stop us, you're a fool." The cowboy stepped out into the daylight, the brim of his hat shadowing his eyes. His hand rested against his revolver, but his voice carried sharper than any bullet, "She ain't movin'. Not today, not while I'm standin' here." The laughter stopped. The men's eyes narrowed, their smiles twisting into something darker. They weren't used to being defied, especially not by a lone man with no name, no home, no stake in the fight. One of them stepped closer, his spurs jangling, his pistol glinting in the sun. "You got no idea who you're talking to, stranger," he growled. The cowboy didn't blink. "Don't need to," he replied. "All I need to know is that a boy begged me to save his mama. And I aim to do just that." It was madness, and the cowboy knew it. These men weren't just ranch hands, they had the town sheriff in their pocket, the judge in their debt, and enough guns to wipe out anyone foolish enough to cross them. To stand against them wasn't just dangerous, it was near suicidal. But something inside him had already decided. He'd been running from himself for too long, hiding in the spaces between towns, letting the world burn without lifting a hand. This time, the boy clutched at the hem of his duster, looking up at him like he was more than just a man, like he was hope made flesh. The cowboy didn't know how to carry hope, but he knew how to carry a fight. And as he squared his shoulders, as he watched the barons, hands drift toward their pistols, he knew the path ahead wasn't survival, it was defiance, and defiance was all he had left to give. The silence stretched, broken only by the creak of leather and the rustle of wind through the dry grass. The cowboy's hand hovered steady near his holster, his stance loose but ready. The barons weren't used to hesitation. When they gave an order, it was followed, no questions asked. To see one ragged drifter plant his boots in the dirt and declare otherwise was almost amusing to them. Almost. The leader, a tall man with a scar carved deep across his jaw, stepped forward, his spurs biting into the ground with every step. He grinned, but it was the kind of grin that never touched the eyes. "You think you're some kind of hero?" he sneered. "This woman's nothing. Her land's ours, her body's ours, and soon enough her boy will be too. Ain't no law out here strong enough to stop it." The cowboy's eyes flickered, not with rage, but with something colder. He didn't waste words. Instead, he let his revolver speak. The motion was fast, quicker than the blink of an eye. The shot cracked like thunder, and the scarred man's pistol clattered to the ground, his hand mangled, his grin twisted into a howl of pain. The other men scrambled, some reaching for the intensity of a single shot that turned their certainty into chaos. "You'll walk away," the cowboy said, voice like gravel, or you'll bleed into this dirt. I don't care how many come back with you, or what paper you wave in my face. That woman and her boy stay right here. His words were carved sharp, meant not just for their ears but for every shadow watching from the porches, from behind curtains, from the edge of the street. The town was listening, and for the first time in years, someone wasn't bowing to the Baron's will. But defiance had its price. The men backed off for now, cursing, vowing to return. And the town, though it had seen courage, was quick to turn fearful. The sheriff found him before the sun had set, his badge gleaming but his eyes tired. You don't know what you've done, the sheriff warned. They own half this county. You stand against them, you stand against the West itself. They'll burn that shack to the ground with her in it if it proves their point. The cowboy looked past the sheriff, to the shack where the boy sat at his mother's side, clutching her hand as if it was the last anchor keeping her tethered to this earth. He tipped his hat low, shadow covering his eyes. Then I guess the West picked the wrong fight, he muttered. That night, as the firelight flickered inside the shack, the woman tried to speak through her pain. You'll die for us, she whispered, her breath ragged. But he shook his head, placing a gentle hand over hers. This is me livin' for once. The boy curled up nearby, finally asleep, his face soft in the glow. The cowboy sat in silence, revolver across his knees, listening for hoofbeats in the distance. He knew they would return, and they would return with more. Men who didn't fear killing. Men who would ride through fire and gun smoke to prove they were untouchable. But as the night stretched on, as the desert stars burned like cold fire above, the cowboy felt something he hadn't in years. Purpose. He wasn't just drifting anymore. He wasn't just another shadow in the dust. He had drawn a line in the sand, and for the first time, he had something worth protecting. And if the whole West wanted to test that line, then so be it.